चलिए नेक्स्ट टाइप ऑफ इंटरेक्शन स्टडी करते हैं विच इज़ कंपटीशन. इन कंपटीशन देयर इज़ नेगेटिव इंटरेक्शन, सो बोथ द स्पीशीज़ आर गेटिंग नेगेटिवली इम्पैक्टेड. इससे पहले हमने पैरासिटिज्म स्टडी किया था जिसके अंदर एटलीस्ट वन स्पीशी वॉज गेटिंग पॉजिटिवली इम्पैक्टेड, बट हेयर बोथ ऑफ देम आर गेटिंग नेगेटिवली इम्पैक्टेड. देयर आर टू टाइप्स ऑफ कंपटीशन. फर्स्ट इज इंटरस्पेसिफिक, सेकेंड इज इंट्रास्पेसिफिक. इंटरस्पेसिफिक इज़ द कंपटीशन अमंग डिफरेंट स्पीशीज़. इसको हम कॉन्टेस्ट कंपटीशन भी कहते हैं. वेयर एज इंट्रास्पेसिफिक इज़ नोन एज स्क्रैम्बल कंपटीशन. इंटरस्पेसिफिक के अंदर जो स्पीशीज़ होती हैं वो अलग अलग होती हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल देयर इज़ वन लायन एंड देयर इज़ वन टाइगर एंड दे बोथ आर competing फॉर वन डियर. There is one deer in the forest and both of them are competing for this one deer. So this is interspecific contest competition. Lion and tiger both are competing for the same food. Therefore there is intense competition. There is a context. There is a contest among these two species. इसी से रिलेटेड एक प्रिंसिपल है दैट इज़ गॉस लॉ, और इसको हम कंपटीशन एक्सक्लूजन प्रिंसिपल भी कहते हैं. गॉस लॉ कहता है कि व्हेन टू स्पीशीज़ हैविंग द सेम ecological niche, so this niche is a new term which we will study. When they have the same ecological niche, they do not persist indefinitely in the same habitat. Habitat is also a new term we will study. Now what is habitat? Habitat is nothing but it's a place of living. This is basically house of living of a species. इसको house बोलते हैं basically. Or we can also say this is nothing but address of the species. Address of the species. एक तरह से species का पता है, उसका address है. Now what is the meaning of the word niche? Niche is nothing but the job of the species. फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर मैं कहूँ जयपुर का कोई डिस्ट्रिक्ट कलेक्टर है तो उसका एड्रेस क्या हुआ? ऑब्वियसली जयपुर हुआ. और उसका निश क्या हुआ? उसका जॉब, दैट इज़ द डिस्ट्रिक्ट कलेक्टर. इकोलॉजिकल टर्म्स में हम निश को बोलते हैं फंक्शनल रोल ऑफ द स्पीशी. Each and every species has got its own functional role. Two species cannot have the same functional role. They may have the same habitat, but they cannot have same functional role. For example, collection of nectar from the flowers is the functional role of honeybees. Is there any other species which can collect the nectar of flowers? No, only honeybee can do it. So what is the functional role or what is the ecological niche of honeybees? It is collecting the nectar. And there are different types of ecological niche such as habitat niche, food niche and reproductive niche. Habitat niche का मतलब है जो कुछ specific species हैं, they will be living in specific habitat only. If that habitat is not there, then the species will also not be there. The species will not exist. The species has certain functional role which are specific to the particular climate of that region or particular environment of that habitat. Therefore, this is known as habitat niche. उसके बाद food niche आता है. Food niche का मतलब है it means that having a particular food for a species. A species is eating a particular food only, and if that particular food is not available, that species will not exist. The survival of a species depends on that particular food only. Reproductive niche का मतलब है the species will be breeding internally. They will be producing the offspring within the same species. In nutshell, I can say that habitat niche का मतलब है it is a place where the species lives. फूड निश में हम स्टडी करते हैं कि व्हाट द स्पीशी ईट्स एंड डिकम्पोज. एंड रिप्रोडक्टिव निश इज़ अबाउट वेयर एंड हाउ द स्पीशी रिप्रोड्यूसेस. तो हम गॉस लॉ स्टडी कर रहे थे, उसमें ये था कि जो दो स्पीशीज़ हैं विच हैव द सेम इकोलॉजिकल निश, they do not persist indefinitely in the same habitat. When the two species are competing for the same limited resources, they cannot coexist in the same habitat for indefinite time period. इसी गॉस प्रिंसिपल को हार्डिन ने कंपटीशन एक्सक्लूजन प्रिंसिपल टर्म किया था. It is because of this rule, lions and tigers, they do not coexist in the same area. In India also, lion and tiger, they have their distinct habitat. For example, in the western part of India, we have lions, we do not have tigers. We find Asiatic girt lions in the Gujarat region, and the Royal Bengal tiger is restricted to the eastern side of India. This principle is also the reason behind domestication of dogs. Initially, men, wolves and dogs, all three of them were dependent on the meat. Men used to hunt and eat meat. So does the wolves and the dogs. Now because dogs cannot compete with the wolves, they became closer to the men. Dogs became closer to men by not eating meat but eating bones. In earlier times, the ecological niche or food niche of man was meat, the muscle mass. And gradually, dogs started depending on the bones. Therefore, now both dogs and men can coexist. But wolves and men cannot coexist because both depend on the meat. So this principle is also the reason behind domestication of dogs, not wolves. Therefore, species having the same ecological niche, they cannot coexist indefinitely. अगर उन्हें कोएग्जिस्ट करना है तो उनमें से किसी एक को अपना पैटर्न या कैरेक्टर चेंज करना पड़ेगा. एंड दिस इज़ द कंपटीशन एक्सक्लूजन प्रिंसिपल. नाउ लेट अस सी द स्क्रैम्बल कंपटीशन विच इज़ इंट्रा specific. For example, there are two tigers who are fighting for the same deer, or there are two dogs who are fighting for the same bone. Although here there also will be some fight between the animal, there will be fight between two tigers, there will be fight between two dogs, but it will not lead to a death of the animal. Sometimes it is because of intra-specific scramble competition, the population of the wildlife is reducing. For example, जो lions हैं, hippopotamus हैं, hippos हैं, rhinos हैं, these are big animals. These animals, they cannot live in colonies. For example, we humans, we live together, we live in colonies, we cooperate with each other. These animals, they do not live in colonies, they live in isolation. Each animal will have its own territory. Suppose this is the territory, and this animal, for example, a lion is there, a lion will have its own territory, and it will mark its territory through its excretion. For example, the lion will urinate around this area and mark its territory. If there is another lion who enters into this territory, then this lion will challenge this lion, there will be a fight. Then one of the lion may either leave the territory, it will go away, or the lion will die protecting its territory. If the lion dies in the fight, then it will be acting as an automatic check on the population of the wild animal. Therefore, we can say that the intra-specific competition sometimes affect the population size of the species. Now let us study Ammensalism. This is another type of biological interaction. Ammensalism जो है वो नेगेटिव ज़ीरो इंट्रैक्शन है. इस इंट्रैक्शन के अंदर वन स्पीशी इज़ नेगेटिवली इम्पेक्टेड and the other species is not at all impacted. For example, if an elephant is walking on a grass, now the grass is getting destroyed, but elephant is having no impact, neither positive nor negative, but the grass is having negative impact. Ammensalism is of two types. One is allelopathy and the second one is antibiosis. एलोपैथी क्या है? It is it is inhibiting the growth of a species by releasing certain chemicals. Suppose this A is a big tree and B is a small plant. Now, what A is doing? A is taking all the minerals and A is blocking the sunlight which should come to the B. Therefore, A is taking away the minerals and nutrition which otherwise should come to the B, but now they are going to the A. And A is blocking the sunlight which otherwise should come to the B. Further, now the A, which is a big tree, is also releasing certain chemicals which inhibit the growth of B. This is called as allelopathy. The antibiosis is also similar to allelopathy, but there is a small difference. In antibiosis also there is a release of chemical by one species which inhibits the growth of another species. The chemicals not only inhibit the growth but also leads to the death of other species. For example, release of chemicals by plants or animals which kills bacteria or fungi. In allelopathy, the chemical release, they stop the growth of the other species, but here the other species dies altogether because of the chemicals. So this was all about Ammensalism. In the next lecture we will study about ecologically significant species.